This would be amendment number, what, 13410?
13410?
Yes.
Thank you.
Dealing with the biometric exit system that's missing from current law. Beginning in 1996, Congress has passed a series of laws, actually 6 different times, to mandate and require that a biometric entry-exit system be established for the United States. The 9/11 Commission has concluded and recommended this as being essential for our national security. The reason is very simple. At our most seaports and airports, you clock in with a system, but it's biographic, which is easily forgeable and not secure, but it is at least done there. And then nothing is done about the exit, particularly at the land ports. As a result, no one can examine somebody's documents and determine if they left the country at the time they were supposed to leave the country. So this is a big, big hole in the system. And it's gone on for years and years. And I have to tell you, colleagues, this is one reason the American people have so little confidence in any promises we make. And the reason why it's difficult that we would say we're going to grant an immediate amnesty with this legislation, but we promise we'll fix the enforcement issues in the years to come, or the months to come, or many years to come. And we haven't fulfilled that. For example, in '96, the Congress adopted this entry-exit system requirement. In 2000, Congress passed another law requiring entry-exit systems at all air, sea, and land ports of entry. In 2000, when amending the visa waiver program, Congress required a fully automated entry-exit control system to record entry and departure information for all aliens participating in the program, and that they be machine readable. After 9/11, Congress once again demanded the implementation of an entry-exit system through the passage of the Patriot Act. The intent of Congress was crystal clear. This is what Congress said, quote, "In light of the terrorist attacks perpetrated against the United States on September 11, 2001, it's a sense of Congress that the Attorney General, in consultation with the Secretary of State, should fully implement the integrated entry and exit data systems for airports, seaports, and land border ports of entry with all deliberate speed as expeditiously as practical." Importantly, as part of the Patriot Act, Congress demanded that the system be biometric and based on tamper-resistant, machine-readable documents. We can do this. This is not that hard to do. A biometric system requires an immigration document match the individual presenting it to the immigration official. And there are a variety of ways to make these documents. I personally think, from my experience in law enforcement, that the fingerprint system should be the basic data system, because that's what happens in our states, whether it's in Illinois or Alabama or Hawaii. If someone is arrested for a crime and maybe fled the area, their fingerprints are put into the system. And by checking fingerprints, you identify fugitives. According to the Department of Homeland Security's own website, quote, "Unlike names and dates of birth, which are biographic, which can be changed, biometrics are unique and virtually impossible to forge. Collecting biometric helps the United States government prevent people from using fraudulent documents to enter the country illegally. Collecting biometric also helps protect your identity in the event your travel documents are lost or stolen." Close quote. That's the DHS analysis of the law and what it means. In 2002, Congress reiterated the demand for a biometric entry-exit system at all ports of entry, requiring Homeland Security to issue machine-readable, tamper-resistant visas and other travel documents that use biometric identifiers. It has not been done. It also required that government install biometric readers and scanners, quote, at all ports of entry in the United States, close quote. Not been done. In 2002, Department of Homeland Security initiated the United States Visitor and Immigrant Status Indicator Technology Program, U.S. Visit, to develop this system. 2 years later, U.S. Visit was collecting biometric data on aliens entering the United States. And then in 2004, Congress demanded a biometric system, exit system, through the passage of the Intelligence Reform Act. Quote, Congress finds that completing a biometric entry and exit system, data system, as expeditiously as possible is an essential investment in the efforts to protect the United States by preventing the entry of terrorists, close quote. This was in 2004, as expeditiously as possible. The Secretary of Homeland Security shall develop a plan to accelerate the full implementation of an automated biometric entry and exit data system, close quote. That's in congressional action. So this is the status of what we do. Currently, an entry capability is operating at about 300 ports. We do have an entry system that's operating. However, the corollary exit program has never gotten beyond the pilot stage, despite widespread congressional support. Because of that, it's impossible to know exactly how many aliens have overstayed their admission. GAO has found that without the exit system, we don't have a system that's valuable. It's not effective. It's a fatal flaw in the plan. So after years of assurances that DHS has been working toward implementing such a system, it appears they have finally given up. They don't pretend to desire to implement it in the future. They've quietly terminated the last pilot program, and there have been several pilot programs over the years. The President's 2013 budget proposal does not specifically request money for a biometric exit. He doesn't ask for the money to do it. And it cuts $73 million for border security, fencing, infrastructure, and technologies, and cuts other $6.7 million for technology modifications. DHS is now implementing biographic system. And Secretary Napolitano said that's what we're going to do now, although the law requires just the opposite, requires a biometric system. So my amendment simply requires that we do what basically current law requires and not back away from that. And my colleagues say this is the toughest system we've ever had, but it undermines this law. It backs away from this system. And colleagues, it can be done. It can be done effectively and easily. You can read cards as you exit the system without any real delay if the proper actions are taken to make the system work, which I hope that we will do. So,
would the Senator yield for a quick question?
Yes.
Under the biographic system, would that permit someone whose name is simply misspelled to evade detection in terms of the entry-exit system?
Yes, it would.
No.
In other words, if your name is misspelled, you're not going to get the hit that you're on the terrorist watch list, Senator Schumer. I think he's correct about that.
If I might, under the system that we've proposed in the bill, that would not happen because, first, it has to be machine readable. That was the mistake with Tsarnaev. Aeroflot wrote it in and wrote it in incorrectly. Second, we use a picture, and the picture is tamper-proof, and every bit is secure in terms of not letting people in as a biometric. Everyone who comes in gets a picture. It goes on a database, so you can't tamper with it. And if you go out, they know it's you. So it's just the difference between what Senator Sessions wants to do and what's in our bill. Our effectiveness is just as high. It's just cost. Now, Jeff is 100% right that not having an exit system was a huge hole in our enforcement regime. 40% of all people who are here in America illegally did not cross the border. but rather they overstayed their visas of various types. That will not be allowed to happen under our proposal. But instead of costing about $25 billion, it will cost much less than that. But it's the same effectiveness using the facial picture on file, non-tamper-proof, coming in, going out. Can't change your, it's hardest thing, it's harder to change your face than change your fingerprint.
Well, reclaiming the floor here, I don't think that you have the exit system set up that will work. Therefore, we can't determine who's staying in the country and who's not effectively.
The Senator yielded to me on this point, and I'll be very brief, which I'm hoping to set an example. I don't think the pathway to citizenship should be a false promise. I hate to keep saying, well, it's just over that mountain, but when you get over that mountain, it's going to be over the next mountain, and the next mountain, the next mountain. The drafters of the bill worked long and hard to get a bipartisan agreement on these triggers. I think
Well,
their triggers are realistic. I don't think this is, and I'm going to stick with the bipartisan drafters of the bill on theirs, but.
well, they've agreed, no doubt. They've met and they apparently still meet regularly, and they decide which amendments will live and die. According to a recent publication, they apparently have decided this one's going to die. But I don't agree.
Well, I'd point out
I don't believe it meets
of
the standards of entry-exit visa that Congress has currently required, and there's no doubt that this legislation, instead of strengthening security of the visa system, weakens the security of the visa system relevant to current mandated requirements. And I would note to my colleagues that at this point, 40% of the illegal people in the country illegally entered on a visa and just did not return. So you can't determine who didn't return if you don't have an effective exit system. So I worry about that, Mr. Chairman. I'd be glad to work with anybody to try to make the system, as time goes by, as efficient and productive as possible. But the fundamental principle that we need an entry-exit system is not so. And your proposal, Senator Schumer, explicitly eliminates the current requirement that there be an exit system at land borders. You don't dispute that, I trust. So that's where we are, Mr. Chairman. I think this is the right and reasonable approach. It's essentially what the current law requires. If we're going to ask the American people to trust us, we ought to comply with the law that we've got rather than weakening it.
Does the Senator want a roll call vote?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cornyn.
Mr. Chairman, last week we considered a number of amendments relative to border security, which all failed, and I think that was a mistake. But there is one way in which the committee can significantly improve this piece of legislation, and that would be to adopt Senator Sessions' common sense approach. It is true, as we all know, that 40% of illegal immigration doesn't come across the border. People come in legally and overstay, and they melt into the great American landscape, and we don't locate them until, or if, unless they commit some crime and are picked up by the police, and then their name is run against a database. But the fact of the matter is the 9/11 Commission, after the terrorist attacks on that terrible day, recommended a biometric entry-exit system. And so this erodes that recommendation. In fact, since 1996, as the senator from Alabama has pointed out, this has been the law of the land, but it's never happened. I can't think of any, well, I believe that the failure to enact an entry-exit system on a biometric basis, as the senator is advocating here, which is essentially the current law, which has never occurred, could lead some people to conclude that this bill is designed to fail, to keep the promise that I know we all want to keep, which is that we are going to improve and fix the broken immigration system. I understand the chairman saying that we don't want to put that you don't want to put obstacles in favor in the way of people who want to get on a pathway to citizenship. But I would think that at the very least, the other side of that equation is we want to create a system that works, and this will not work.
Mr. Chairman,
And
May I
so
respond?
I don't know how, after 17 years later, Congress hadn't forced the executive branch to implement an entry-exit program, how people can trust us that somehow we've had a conversion and it will happen now, absent a trigger. Now, my conversations with Senator Rubio, he happened to share with me that Walt Disney World in Florida uses a biometric system to ensure people don't commit ticket fraud. And I would say that if biometric systems are that easy, affordable, and good enough for the Magic Kingdom, they ought to be good enough for the United States of America. So Senator Sessions' amendment would guarantee that registered provisional immigrants under the bill would not be eligible for lawful permanent residence until the Department of Homeland Security has deployed a biometric exit system. I don't know any other way the Department of Homeland Security under the current leadership will ever do what Congress mandates them to do unless we use this trigger to compel them to do it. It's just that simple. So I believe this is a constructive amendment that achieves the stated goals of all members of the committee, protecting the national security of the United States and ensuring that our immigration system is fair and workable. But if we choose to ignore the source of 40% of illegal immigration, or we create a system that can be evaded, then we've ignored our constituents' concerns and failed to fix the problem. So without a fully deployed biometric exit system, the only thing this bill guarantees that a future Congress will someday be sitting in the exact spot as we are right now, trying to explain why there have been more empty promises and no results. So I hope the committee will support Senator Sessions' amendment. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you said Senator Feinstein, Senator Schumer, and Senator Durbin. It has to be recognizing Senator Grassley. Let's go Senator Feinstein, Senator Grassley, Senator Schumer, and Senator Durbin. Senator Sessions asked for a roll call vote, which we'll then have because he has that right. Senator Feinstein and Senator Grassley.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for this opportunity. I think Senator Sessions has a point. I've looked at this now for 15 years, from the days of Doris Meisner. I've been on the Immigration Subcommittee. We have pushed and shoved and pushed toward a biometric exit system, an exit system that is the best technologically, and there's no question in my mind that the biometric system is the fail-safe system. The problem is that we have not been able to do it. And, you know, Senator Schumer assures me that the biographic system with a photograph cannot be changed. I don't happen to necessarily believe that. And the other problem is the cost. And what I keep hearing is this incredible cost, that it would raise the bill to cost. But I have real frustration because we have had Homeland Security executive after Homeland Security executive come in, commit to timelines, and not be able to carry those timelines out. So, I mean, I have to think a lot about what I'm going to do here. The department just hasn't seemed to be able to do it. My understanding is that it adds $10 billion to the bill. Is that
25.
25 billion over what period of time?
10 years. And it's not a guarantee. Just in answer to the question, I'll use my
please.
time there.
Thank you.
They tried the biometric system in Atlanta and Detroit, 2 places, Atlanta and somewhere else, and it just didn't work. More people got through. And the system that we've put in place in this bill to act as my friend from Texas did, that would, of course, the present law is terrible, and we know that. But what we've tried to do is put in the best system that is workable within a reasonable period of time.
What you're telling me is that there is a photograph that if you grow a beard, if you grow a mustache, if you change the color of your eyes, if you fill in your face or deplete your face in some way, that all of that will be picked up.
Yeah, because you're the place where you can change the way your face looks, but the Visa card that you go in with and go out with has to be the same.
Well,
you can't tamper with it.
Yes, but an individual would. In any event, you know, I'm for the bill. I don't want to stop the bill. I am concerned that the identification be the best identification we can come up with. I have seen too much fraud. I've seen cards bought for $110 on Alvarado Street in Los Angeles, Social Security, driver's licenses, you name it. And the fraud is enormous in this area.
Yeah.
And my understanding is if you use the iris of the eye and use other biometric features, that you have essentially a fail-safe mechanism. And that's what I'd hoped this bill would do.
Well, you know, you can always change the iris of your eye, too. But our system, the system that we've used, I've been advocating a biometric, as my good friend knows, for years. And when we studied this over the last 6 months, we found this was the best system because the biometric has failed for a variety of reasons. And there are two fail-safes in turn. One is the card, and second, there's a database that shows who the person is as well. So you have a backup, and it's proved to be, no system is 100% fail-proof.
Well,
This
Senator
system
Chairman.
comes as high, this system comes as high as any to making it work.
Well,
I believe there was a lineup. I think
there was.
Senator Durbin.
Grassley and
Senator
Durbin.
Grassley, you were next.
Thank you. First of all, we just heard this figure, $25 billion. I've heard that same figure. I don't know where it comes from, but I've heard it from airlines, and airlines don't want this. And that's why you get that figure of $25 billion. If there's another source of figure than airlines, I'd like to hear it. In the meantime, I would take issue with this charge that's been made that it's easier to change fingerprints than it is the face, and I would also take issue with whether or not this delays citizenship. With 10 years to citizenship, we shouldn't delay it longer than that period of time. But in the meantime, if this has been on the books for more than 10 years, that this should be done, and we've got another 10 years. If we can't get something right in 20 years, there's something wrong with what we're trying to do, and it's that people are impeding it as opposed to let's get the job done. That's the attitude that we need to take towards everything that we want in this bill to secure the borders, to make sure that people get citizenship, to make sure that there's legalization. If that's the goal of Congress and we pass a bill to do it, we ought to make sure that we get the job done. So I would, I'm going to add my name as a co-sponsor of this legislation. I think that this amendment will make us safer.
Yes.
And on this issue, if we pass this bill the way it's before us without this amendment, it's going to be weaker than current law. And it seems to me in this situation we're in, we ought to be strengthening law, not weakening law. And there's just a lot of lessons we learned going way back to the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. And so we've got to learn from our past mistakes. The Sessions Amendment would ensure that the intent of the 96 law is carried out. What's wrong with reasserting what the law is? If we all want to strengthen our immigration system, then we shouldn't be passing a law that weakens it. What's good is a system if only some ports keep track of departures. And so you get down to the bottom line. This is a border security issue. Without a system like this in place, we aren't in control, and if you aren't in control of your borders, you're compromising the sovereignty of our country. And if Hong Kong can brag about every cargo that goes out on their ships, they know what's inside, whether or not there's any material that can be used for terrorist activity. Surely we ought to be able to tell who comes and goes from our great country here, the greatest country on the face of the earth. I yield.
Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry Senator Cornyn has stepped away, but I wanted to address a couple issues that he raised. First, he said there were no amendments adopted from the Republican side in a previous meeting, and I think on reflection he would realize we adopted some significant amendments, including the Leahy-Cornyn amendment, that applied the 90% standard across the border with Mexico. So this has clearly been a bipartisan effort, and it should continue to be. I also wanted to address Walt Disney for a minute. Walt Disney has 2 ports of entry, one in Florida, one in California. We have 329 ports of entry in the United States, which include land, sea, and air. And if we were talking about being able to read cards at all ports of entry for those leaving the United States, it's a more daunting task than it is at Disney World or Disneyland. What we're trying to do here is to do something which is achievable and make America safer. We would all concede that the biometric approach is a more sophisticated and perhaps a better approach. But we also have to concede that it's been elusive. We've set this as our legislative goal since the 9/11 Commission. And because of the expense and the technical challenge, we realize it's not likely to come about very soon. We've come up with a strong alternative, which will make America safer. And this alternative is one that is affordable and can be implemented and will provide us verification of those who are leaving the nation. I used to ask this question over and over again at Judiciary Committee hearings: why is it taking so long to do a biometric system? It turns out to be a dramatic challenge and a very expensive challenge. So we will continue along the path as the law requires us toward a biometric solution. But in the meantime, what we include in this bill is a dramatic improvement over the current situation. And let me add one other thing. If this Sessions amendment results in delaying the implementation of this bill, it means that fewer people will come forward to be identified in the United States. That can't make us safer. What we want to do is make sure that those who are eligible for temporary status or citizenship status come forward, identify themselves, and those who are ineligible from the start because of disqualifications of a criminal record, for example, aren't going to be in this country any longer. We want to continue this process toward the eventual citizenship of the people involved, do it in a reasonable way. I'm afraid the Sessions amendment sets a standard which is not attainable, not affordable, and not one that we can realistically look forward to implementing in the near term, so I will oppose it.
Mr. Chairman.
And just one moment. I'm glad that Senator Durbin mentioned the Leahy-Cornyn amendment. Actually, last Thursday, just to indicate that unlike the comments made by some that this was totally partisan, we adopted the Grassley 2 amendment, we adopted the Grassley 5 amendment, we adopted the Sessions 36 amendment, we adopted the Cornyn 6 amendment, the Flake 1 amendment, and the Flake 2 amendment. Those are the, and the Grassley 1 amendment, and the Grassley 24 amendment. I could go over more, but those are just some to indicate that you know, that we had both Democratic and Republican amendments that were adopted on Thursday. Go ahead, Senator Sessions.
Well, I agree that this is not so much a partisan matter. It's a bill drafted by a bipartisan group, and they will accept modest amendments. Don't make much difference, but they don't accept anything that seriously deals with the integrity of the bill. And there's not going to be a delay here, Senator Durbin. Surely you wouldn't oppose the bill if we have a biometric entry-exit system in it. Surely you wouldn't delay the passage of the bill if we have it comply with current law. And it gives the Secretary 10 years under this trigger to get around to it. Now, the airlines, to my knowledge, have said it might be $10 billion, but they have opposed this for the last 20 years, and that's why it hasn't happened. Secretary Ridge went through that for years. Senator Feinstein remembers the debates that we had over it. USA Today has just written an article about it. Secretary Ridge again says one of his greatest frustrations was a failure to reach an agreement on this very subject. He blames it primarily on the airlines' objections. It's not a technological problem. Senator Feinstein, I think you're correct that the government has established a system already to collect fingerprints and pictures of every foreigner entering the country. They get that at the embassies before they get their visa. So when they come, they're clocked in on this system. It's when they basically go out that we don't have the system in work. And so Secretary Ridge said the failure, the further away we get from 9/11, the less interested Congress has become in insisting that we have an exit system. We just lost our will along the way. And I think that's pretty much what Michael Chertoff, who also was Homeland Security after Ridge, said that there's a gold standard for security. And USA Today declares that Ridge and Chertoff remain convinced that biometrics are the way to go. These aren't people making partisan charges. They have just, after being as head of this organization, remained convinced that biometrics is the way to go. There's a 99.73% accuracy rate, and USA Today doesn't score. They use the figure $3 to $6 billion as the cost that might be incurred. I think it could be done for less than that if we're careful. It doesn't take a major alteration of the system at an airport or a port to have a person go through the line where their card can be read when they get off an airplane. How hard is that? So I think what we've got is Secretary Napolitano basically told us in the committee that she believes biographic is sufficient. And that's what she's committed to. The bill drafters have put that in it, and it does not strengthen security at our ports and our entryways. It weakens it. So it undermines the credibility of the bill sponsors that they are making the bill stronger when it plainly makes it current law weaker. I really believe that so much effort has gone into this. I was involved in it with Secretary Ridge, and I urged him, as my colleagues who've been prosecutors know, the importance of fingerprints to any criminal justice identity system, because in all of your states, counties, and local areas, criminals are fingerprinted if they're convicted. If they're a fugitive, those fingerprints are available in the National Crime Information Center, and it's available to any inquiry and would be picked up by this system. So I guess what I would say is I talked to Secretary Ridge at length about it. He was not sure for a long time, but some months after our last conversation, when he left office, he said, I have one advice for my successors, and that is use the fingerprint system. He had given a lot of thought and time to that, and as a result, I urge my colleagues to support this amendment.
And Senator Graham wished to speak before we call the roll. Senator Graham.
One, I think this is a very good debate for us to be having about immigration, but not really limited to immigration. How can you protect the nation at a time when the nation's very much at risk? Two of the 9/11 hijackers were visa overstays. They were stopped by the police, and they were not able to find a system that would inform the police officer this person's here illegally. To me, that problem has to be addressed in light of the world in which we live. Current law is a concept, and there is apparently not a whole lot of will by Republicans or Democrats to make the concept a reality. We had the Congress, the White House from 2000 to 2008 on our watch. Apparently we didn't move forward. And at the end of the day, biometric identification of people coming and going, I think would be a good thing. But what we've done is taken the current system and made it better. Now, if you want to spend multiple billions of dollars to have a biometric entry-exit system, count me in for moving that direction. But I would just say to my good friend, Senator Sessions, check in your wallet and see how many biometric cards you have. How many driver's license are biometric? Is our Senate ID biometric? My military ID is not biometric. That's not saying that the technology is not better. I'm saying it's generally not deployed throughout the country.
Would my colleague yield for one quick point?
Yes.
So Senator Grassley mentioned Disney World, Disneyland or Disney World. It is true that Disney World used a fingerprint. And then when Disneyland went ahead to use their system, they went to a picture because they thought it was better, making my colleague's case.
I have no idea. I'm too busy to go to either place, but
I tell
no,
you,
I'll accept. I'll accept.
Senator Graham, you made me look. This is my driver's license from Vermont. No photo, nothing. But
I would suggest you improve that in Vermont. Now.
No, I kind of like it the way it is.
But here's the point. Senator Schumer and I originally wanted a biometric Social Security card for employer verification. Because Senator Feinstein's right. If you like Ronald Reagan or you pick the Democrat you would like to be named after, I can make you that person under the current Social Security system in about an hour, and it costs you less than $100. When it came to employer verification, I think E-Verify will work, but the best system would, for all of us in the country, to turn our paper card into a biometric document to protect American jobs. But we're not going to do that because it costs so much money, and it's going to take a long time. But count me in for getting there one day. Senator Sessions, count me in for having a biometric system applied to entry-exit visa program. But we just haven't shown the will or desire to do that. There are technological barriers, and I would end with saying that the current system is not where we need to be. Current law, no one seems to be driving toward that goal. We've had a lot of time to do it. Our bill definitely, in my view, improves the current system to make us all safer.
Mr. Chairman, one little thing I failed to mention, the biometric system, it has not failed. It's being used today across the government. When you go in to get a visa, you get a biometric identifier that's read when you exit or come into the country. When you enter, they're doing 30,000 queries a day in the United States through the U.S. visit system on biometric identification visas. We just don't have the system complete, so it really works to protect America in a sophisticated way. This is doable. It's already being done, and it can easily be done. We just, I'm disappointed that the sponsors aren't willing to make the system actually work as designed.
I would note that in the IDs we have here in the Senate do have our photographs on it, but when you go on to go on the floor, it goes to a machine that says whether the staff member has floor privileges or not. I suggest senators check that. If you put your ID in, your U.S. Senator's ID in, it will say you do not have floor privileges. Maybe they're trying to tell us something. Clerk will call the roll.